I think every president of the United States has gone in and said, I could do business with Putin until they've been stabbed in the back multiple times. Putin is a bold-faced liar. He is a deceptive individual. The president should wake up and say, President Putin is not serious about peace. He's just playing me. The only way to respond to Putin is to send significant weapons to Ukraine and do these sanctions.
Some critics, particularly online, they label you a warmonger for your support of Ukraine. And some allege that members of Congress, they back Kyiv for financial gain. How to respond to those accusations, and what are the core reasons you personally support Ukraine?
First, isolationists and those who don't stand up to bullies get us into wars. We saw that in 1939 when Chamberlain and the French leader tried to give away part of Czechoslovakia to Hitler, so we had peace at our time. And then that was in 1938, and by 1939 we were in World War II. If you don't stand up to a bully, the bully keeps pushing people around and invading other people. And in this case, Ukraine is a democracy, a country that wants to be part of the West, and that's why Russia is invading it. We have an obligation to help there. So this is not being a warmonger. It's about having a moral compass and standing up for democracy and a country that's a victim against an invader who murders people, murders POWs, bombs cities every night. We just got to see there's a moral clarity here that we should be on the right side of that. And when people say that there's financial benefits involved for me, that would be illegal. So bring it on. Have the FBI investigate me and my financial dealings. It's just stupid stuff when people say that.
About your work, you're co-leading the Bipartisan Peace Through Strength Against Russia Act, which would impose sweeping sanctions on Moscow and link their removal to a peace deal accepted by Ukraine. Can you explain what this bill aims to achieve and why it's necessary right now?
Well, I'm on two different bills. I'm on a Democrat one, and it needs two more signatures to bring up on the floor. But I'm very close to Brian Fitzpatrick. We work together on a lot of things, and he put this bill together, and I'll give him credit, working with Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate, so it could be bipartisan and bicameral. And so my name's on that bill. We need another 3 or 4 days, just by the rules, to put it as a discharge petition, and then we got to get enough signatures we could force this vote on the floor. But basically, we want to do the hardest sanctions on Russia ever. And we want to sanction countries who are doing business with Russia that are propping Russia up. Now, I know that causes problems with allies like India, but this is the highest priority right now, is choking Russia's economy so that it cannot support the war effort, so it doesn't have the economic means to continue the invasion of Ukraine and to continue bombing Ukrainian cities at night. And this should be the priority. And a lower priority is pleasing people who are doing trade with Russia. Frankly, that's very secondary to me. We got to win this war, and we got to get Russia to realize it cannot win, or that the pain is too high to continue its war.
On the other hand, critics argue that tougher sanctions on Russia and increased pressure, they only risk prolonging the war rather than ending it. How do you respond to that concern, and why do you believe this approach actually increases the chances of a durable and forcible peace?
Well, so it says putting sanctions on Russia just prolongs the war. What they're saying is they want Ukraine to capitulate. That would be terrible. If Ukraine capitulates, first of all, it's a victory for a Russian invader, for Putin. But who's next? Is it Azerbaijan? Is it Georgia? Is it Moldova? Is it the Baltics? Putin doesn't want to stop with Ukraine. And so saying this prolongs the war, it's just the opposite. We have to convince Putin that he cannot win the war, or that the cost is too high to prolong the war. And that's what we got to do here. By the way, this should only be one of the things that we do, sanctioning Russia. I support significant weapons going to Ukraine, long-range cruise missiles, long-range air defense, anti-shipping missiles, you name it. We should provide all this to Ukraine because it's in our national security interest to do so, and it's also morally right to help out a democracy that's being a victim of Putin.
You're a Republican who has publicly disagreed with Donald Trump on foreign policy, including his approach to Russia's war against Ukraine, for example, as you said, with weapons supplies. In your view, what does President Trump misunderstand about this war, and what risk does this misunderstanding pose for US interests and even global security, for example, European?
I'm a traditional Republican. Ronald Reagan is what got me involved in politics when I was 13 years old, when he ran for president in 1976. He lost that year, but then he won in 1980. I'm a fan of people like Ike Eisenhower, the first general, the first commander of NATO. I My roots go back to George or General Grant and Abraham Lincoln. These are the people that are my role models, and they believe in peace through strength. They believed in standing up for the right, staying on the right side, having a moral compass in your foreign policy. Doesn't mean we want to go to war with everybody, but we should stand on the right side and try to help those that share our values. I believe in a foreign policy that has realism in it, but also idealism, a blend of the two. Now, President Trump doesn't seem to have that background. He says peace through strength, but it means something a little different than what Ronald Reagan meant. The president is more transactional. It's more about what's in it for America, economically. I think our values transcend economic benefit. It's more important to be on the right side morally and with the right values than what economic gain or costs may be involved. Though I think there should be an eye towards that. Don't get me wrong. Can't totally tune out the cost of a strategy. But the president is basically a transactional leader, maybe almost all realism with no idealism in it. And I think a foreign policy without values is not good. We should be driven by our values and by principle, bounded by realism. Don't get me wrong, but the president seems to be transactional only.
Yes, speaking of realism, after the Trump administration kidnapped Venezuelan dictator Maduro and also is signaling tough measures towards Iran over its crackdown on protests, do you think the White House could apply the same level of pressure on Moscow?
Absolutely. The president at times has says he's going to send cruise missiles to Ukraine, and other times he says we're going to do tough sanctions, then backs off. And he has, frankly, been very weak towards Russia for some unknown reason. You could have to do psychology, and you'd have people with 3 or 4 different reasons why it would be. So we really don't know. But the bottom line is he is weak on Russia, weak on Putin, and I don't know why. Russia's economy is like rated 11th or 12th in the world. It doesn't pack a significant economic weight to it. Doesn't have nuclear weapons, but deterred by our nuclear weapons. And so it's hard to understand for me why the president has not stood up to Putin in the same way that he stood up to Iran and Venezuela's Maduro. So this kidnapping of Maduro, it could be idealism or it could be total transactionalism. We don't know yet. I frankly think Venezuela is better off without Maduro. Maduro and his predecessor Chavez took Venezuela from the richest, wealthiest country in South America to the poorest of all the countries in South America. People are starving to death in Venezuela, and it's resource rich. And it's because of the terrible leadership there. So it is good that Maduro's out, but what do we do with it? My hope is that we help the rightfully elected legitimate leaders be put in place that won that election during the last election. So it's a little early to say how we're going, but the president has been tough on Iran, tough on Venezuela, and has not shown that with Russia.
Both are actually Moscow's allies. What concrete steps should the Trump administration take now to force Russia to negotiate in good faith over Ukraine? Because, I see those negotiations, and for me, it looks like Moscow just pretends to negotiate. Yes, they send their envoys, but they don't do it in a good faith. So what should the Trump admin do?
First of all, Putin is a bull-faced liar. He is a deceptive individual, and it seems like some members of our president or our administration don't seem to see that. I think every president of the United States has gone in and said, I could do business with Putin until they've been stabbed in the back multiple times. And they should know better. Putin's a bad guy. And so, in my view, the president should be sending long range weapons, offensive and defensive, to Ukraine, should be providing them the intelligence to use these weapons to the maximum potential that these weapons can bring. We should be doing these tough sanctions on Russia. And the goal is this: Russia, you cannot win. In Russia, prolonging the war is too costly for you. That's got to be the message. Now, we also should be clear that Ukraine is a sovereign state. They have the right to form alliances with who they want. And if they want to be a part of NATO, that's a decision between NATO and Ukraine. Russia has zero say in it at this point. And I think that's what scares Russia the most, is that Ukraine will find its alliances with members of the West, and then Russia will never be able to take Ukraine back. So I think we should give the green light. Ukraine, it is your right to be able to negotiate, form the alliances that you want. And Russia, tough. I mean, Russia maybe had a bigger say prior to 2022, but Ukraine stayed out of NATO, and Ukraine wasn't having part of these alliances with England or France or Germany or the United States, but Russia invaded anyway. So at this point, I think Russia's lost any say on what Ukraine should do in its future.
And on another note, you recently joined House Democrats to introduce the No Funds for NATO Invasion Act, aimed at blocking any US military move on NATO territory, of course, including Greenland. Do you really think President Trump might try to act on his threats to take over the islands?
I would have told you a month ago or 2 months ago, it's ludicrous. It will never happen. I still like to think that, but the president keeps saying it, and his team. They keep saying the military option is on the table. The president has said yesterday and the day before that one way or the other way, Greenland's going to become part of the United States. And it is utterly appalling. It is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And I hate to say it that way. And I'm a Republican. I'm a Reagan Republican. Greenland and Denmark are our allies. And I've served with Danes and over in the Middle East. They've been some of our best helpers when it comes to the Air Force, and just they're an outstanding ally. And Greenland welcomes not only our base that we have there now, they would have welcomed 5, 6, 7, 8 more bases in Greenland if we thought it was necessary. And they welcome economic investment where it's a win-win, things for mining and things like that in Greenland to help them extract some of those materials that are very hard to get to in Greenland, by the way. President Trump could have done all of this as a friend, not as an enemy. And so I am totally flabbergasted by the statements and the policy coming out of the White House. It is one of the worst things I've ever seen, frankly, in recent years of any president. And so I'm going to stand up against it. I wish I didn't have to. I think it's silly. I think it's stupid. But since the president even said yesterday, one way or the other way, Greenland's going to become part of America, I feel like I have an obligation to stand up and say that this Republican disagrees.
Yeah, some analysts warn that a move like this could threaten the coercion of NATO itself. From your perspective, what are the potential consequences for the alliance and for America's leadership in Europe if a NATO member faces a direct threat from the US?
It would be the end of NATO if we do this with Greenland. And NATO's been the most successful alliance, I think, in the history of mankind. It's prevented war with Soviet Union and then Russia, since the late 1940s. And it's been an incredible alliance. And even when we didn't have war in Europe, we had wars in other places in the world. NATO allies served with America. It's been America has been blessed to have this NATO alliance. And it really pains and saddens me to see the current administration weaken NATO by actions and by their statements, right? Words and deeds have undercut NATO. I hope we can survive this over the next 3 years and repair. But the bullying on Ukraine, on Greenland, it weakens NATO. And if anything was actually done, it would break up NATO, and it would be terrible for our country. We have a few Republicans, and there are not many, but there's some that say we want to be America first and America alone. But when you say America alone, that means America weaker, right? America without alliances is a weaker country. But yet it's really a 1930s foreign policy, maybe even 1890s foreign policy that we're seeing right now. But they seem to forget we fought World War II. We have NATO, and it was successful, and that we are the leader of the free world. We got to act like it.
Yeah, you know what's also interesting? From my sources, I know that European leaders, they see Trump's stance on Greenland and the way he's trying to broker a peace deal in Ukraine. And they are quietly waiting for the US to actually walk away from trying to broker a peace deal, at the same time keeping a Pearl program alive, supplying Ukraine with weapons, maybe imposing more sanctions on Moscow. Do you think the Trump administration should stop trying to broker a peace deal, at the same time keeping its support for Ukraine?
I think they should see that it has not worked. Over the last 12 months, Russia has just strung President Trump along and bombed Ukrainian cities every night. And so the president should wake up and say, President Putin is not serious about peace. He's just playing me. And the only way to respond to Putin is to send significant weapons to Ukraine and do these sanctions. And you got to play hardball. And that's the only way to do it. There's no other way out of it.
Hey, my name is Tim, and I'm a reporter with the Kyiv Independence National Desk. If you want to see more interviews like this with people who are standing for what is right, you can subscribe on our channel. And you can also become our member, you can support our journalism from the ground. You can find the link in the description.